I'm Andrew Wallace, and welcome to the We've Got a Problem podcast. This week, I'm talking with Alex Medvick, a Colorado-based wedding and elopement photographer who describes himself as a responsibly carefree, extroverted hermit who loves people, hiking, cameras, and Chipotle. But like a lot of us, except maybe me, he's more than what he does for work, which is why we're gonna talk about today. So, Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here. I forgot that I wrote that description of myself. That's pretty great, honestly. I will I won't be humble there. I really like that.
It's a perfect description. It's a perfect description. Well, part of it is so many people put what they do and define themselves by that. You are way more than that, and it's only partially encapsulated in your wild description there, but it's true. You do photography, but I think of you more as kind of like an inquisitive adventurer, going out there and looking for beautiful things and creating beautiful moments with beautiful people. Now, I don't know if every one of your clients is beautiful, but certainly on the Instagram, you've got a lot of really good looking couples in your photography. And I imagine, part of what you have to do being for work is finding and creating moments that make people's natural, I say, beauty shine and capture that. In nature photography, as I say this as a gross oversimplification, you can go out and you can find a beautiful moment and capture it, but you have to create some of these things or at least direct them. People who aren't used to being photographed, people who aren't used to being in those kinds of situations, in something that seems a little forced, and make it natural and bring that out. How do you do that?
Yeah, man. I love how you said, and I think what you said initially about me is that I'm more than what I do. That's integral to how I approach photography, because I believe that people are more than what they do. So my goal, and that ends up being what makes the photos look how they look, with that sense of connection, is I really get to know the people. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to just, have people say, oh, hey, I look really hot in that photo, but that's it. Like, I want people to look at that photo and say, hey, wow, like I this actually felt like something real. And hopefully it was something real. So from the beginning, if it's a wedding client, from the beginning, like, I make a promise to them that I want to get to know them, so that I can really show up holding what they value with me on that day, so that I can actually, look around and say, oh, like, these are the people that they love. Like, this is why maybe this moment that seems kind of maybe mild is actually like insanely meaningful to them. And that even boils down to, maybe more set up portraits, just knowing them enough to get them to interact in a way that is natural to them. Because at the end of the day, it is more than the photos. It's about, how they feel when they look at those photos. And if they're like, oh, he told me to put my hand 2 inches down to the left and we turned a quarter turn to the right, that feels fake. They're going to feel weird about that. So really, the short answer is that I approach it as these people being people. The people matter more than the photos. And that's what allows those photos to actually really, truly matter to those people.
Yeah. For sure. Well, part of the thing for me sometimes is, having not been through it myself, right? I have not been married, but having been peripherally involved in helping somebody try and plan a wedding, there's a lot of stuff that makes it an experience that you almost go, I'm not sure this is actually worth it, after all the forced merriment and the forced this and and all the things that are involved, let alone the cost and the fact that you don't get to eat most of the time on your own wedding day.
Not if I have anything to say about it.
Well, there you go. Right. And one of the things that I saw very quickly when I was preparing for the interview was, you kind of enmesh yourself with the couple, become kind of a third wheel, and almost you're almost pulling the strings behind the scenes to make sure that their day is better because you're there. And that's rare, it seems to me, just from casual observation. It seems like most of the people who are involved in the kind of wedding production are actually there just to make people more nervous and more upset, and to drag people from here to here. that the wedding planner is grabbing somebody and going, well, you've got to do this now, and you've got to do this now, and you can't talk to these people, and we've got to be over here, and now we've got to, tempus fugit. Like, what the hell is it's supposed to be? Like, what? First of all, it's going to show up on camera, I think, when people are frazzled and all that. But
well, people know. People know how they felt. You can't fool people about themselves. I might be able to lie to myself, but I can't make other people lie to themselves.
Right. I wish. Sometimes I wish I could. If I could, that would be a superpower, right? I mean, it'd be a horrible one.
I think that's politics.
Yeah. Baby. Yeah. But wow, what a superpower that would be if you could do that.
Oh, man.
I mean, on command. Oh, it'd be horrible. I mean, it's, evil dictator type stuff. But there'd be times when it'd be like, it'd be nice to get this person to lie to themselves so I can get this done. I mean, now I've revealed that I'm an evil genius, and that's what it's all about. So you drive like 35,000 miles a year, or have driven like 35,000 miles a year. You go everywhere. What, 45 states, something like that. So where have you been? What have you seen? Tell me everything.
Yeah, man. Well, so first off, I want to start with the states that I haven't been because they're super random.
That's a big question.
So Hawaii and Alaska, that kind of makes sense, right? They're like a little more removed. I want to go to Alaska so bad. It's going to happen. Same for Hawaii, but that's a little harder. And then I haven't been to Vermont, North Dakota, or Florida. The most random states. There's no reason. It just hasn't happened. And I kind of weirdly like it that way.
Talk to me about some of the places that you've gone and why you went there. I mean, how did these trips start? How did you?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So the first real, so it's funny growing up, I was kind of born in Pennsylvania, and then we slowly worked our way down to Texas. So from Pennsylvania to like Louisiana to Arkansas to Texas, like that's a lot of moves. It's a lot of diverse places to be. So in a weird way, that sort of was the prequel to me, like road tripping and moving, because it got me kind of acclimated to being like, yeah, desert is fine, trees are fine, this is all fine, this is great. And so then I lived in Pennsylvania for all my teenage years, and I got really, really fed up with it, and I was like, screw it, I've got to go, I got to do something. So as soon as I turned 18, I grabbed my like beater stick shift Honda Civic. It was like a beater 2-door coupe. And I like pushed down the back seats, and I put like a board in the back seat so that I could like kind of create an even platform to sleep on in it. All the speakers were broken too, so I duct taped. They were fine when I got it. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I put some wear into it. So I duct taped like the old computer speakers to the back seats on each side, and like I plugged an iPod in there so I could still have music. And so I took this and I just drove around the country for like 5 weeks, and maybe like 9 out of 10 nights I would sleep in that car. No air conditioning, August, middle of the summer. It's funny enough, the first thing I did was I drove straight up to South Dakota, and I hit up the Badlands. And really, it's so cool in retrospect. But for some reason, I got there and I was so unimpressed that I stayed there for 10 minutes and kept driving. In retrospect, I realized I was very tired and dehydrated, and I just, it was not
right.
Not
maybe should have given it more than 10 minutes, and
Yeah, I
cool
still haven't gone
beverage.
back. I got to go back. then I was like, everybody was like, oh, you got to go to Mount Rushmore, and I drove by Mount Rushmore out of spite. I was just like, everything out here sucks. It's South Dakota. In retrospect, I was so dumb. South Dakota is awesome. Yeah. I can't wait to go back. But so that road trip was just really, really shaping, because spending 5 weeks as an 18-year-old in a beater car, that does a lot for confidence, for curiosity, as far as putting yourself in terrifying situations, and then realizing that, okay, well, I'm not dead. It brought me to the realization that, like, okay, look, I'm either going to die or I'm going to get through this situation, which has been a pretty good life skill to have. It's definitely helped me to push through a lot of things. I during that trip, oh my gosh, I spun my car out in Oregon somehow and ended up like in a ditch on the side of the road, like did like 2 360s in the highway and slammed into a ditch. And this farmer had to like help pull out my car and like pull the rocks out of my tires. Ultimately that ended up giving me like a flat tire a few weeks later when like a nail finally fell out. which was a whole other adventure. But yeah, I mean, it was just complete nonsense. But that really set me up. Like, okay, if I can do this for 5 weeks, kind of hate my life, but also kind of love it. I'm like,
Yeah.
what else? Like, what else is possible to push myself for?
Yeah, I think part of it is the once you show yourself that something is possible
Mm-hmm.
and and tolerable in a way, because I that's kind of a general problem that people look at things and say, I can't do that. And you go, you haven't done it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know where your line is. I liken it to people at the gym go in and start working out for the first time, and they don't they go, I'm going to go to failure. You go, actually, you're going to fatigue. Failure is when you can't
Yeah.
hold on to that thing anymore and you fall onto the ground. Let's not go there. You don't want to do that, but like let's be clear. You think the stopping line is here, and it's actually here. And once you learn that you've got this gap, and that you're like, okay, when I'm here, I'm okay. Like I'll be all right. I got it. I keep driving. Spun out. Not dead.
Yep. Yep.
Still, all right. Not the end of the
Somehow.
world. Somehow. Yeah, there you go. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, part of it is so few people these days, it seemed like, start to follow their own path or think about doing something different outside of the box. As an 18-year-old to go off on a 5-week road trip is relatively rare because most 18-year-olds are not, as I've said earlier on other episodes of the podcast, always emotionally mature enough to be thinking beyond what others have told them they should be doing. And most people at 18, it's like, all right, you know, you're going to graduate, you're going to go to college, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, or you're going to graduate high school, you're going to get a job, you're going to go and start working like your dad did, like your grandfather did, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's the period of time, though, when you have the ability to fail miserably if you want to, and still have plenty of time to do cool stuff. And in fact, probably to do cool stuff without very many consequences. As long as you don't kill yourself spinning out in a car,
Yeah.
don't do that. But,
Yeah.
you know, so how did you end up in Colorado? What brought you over there?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It kind of all goes back to that, that road trip. That was my first time seeing so much of the country. And I mean, a lot of places really stuck out to me. But Colorado was kind of where I like ended the road trip. Obviously, I had to drive back to Pennsylvania through there. But I'm going to be honest, most things east of Colorado were not that exciting to me. So that was sort of the spiritual end to the road trip. And so that was always kind of in my mind. And I had a couple of family and friends out here, and that allowed me to kind of continuously visit maybe more easily than other places. And, I spent the last however many years thinking, oh man, if only I could move, if only I could move. I hate Pennsylvania, if only I could leave. And then I had to kind of reconcile with myself. And I was like, hey, well, what if you could, what if you're choosing not to do this thing, or you're choosing to stay here rather than being forced to stay here? And I was like, oh, that's probably true. Honestly, that's something that's been hugely impactful in my life, is being able to ask the question or claim what I'm doing, saying, okay, I'm not forced to do this. I'm choosing to do this. There's
Right.
always another alternative. Even that alternative is horrifically terrible. Ultimately, I am choosing to make the decision that I feel is best for myself in that moment. It's like, oh, what if the decision could be moving? And so I started looking around, and a lot of this happened during COVID too. A lot of introspection. When you're locked in your house for 3 months, you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, wow, what if everything could be different?
We all had plenty of time to do that during COVID. Yeah.
I know, for real, man. And so, I was looking at all the places, and California was ridiculously expensive and on fire. Montana is,
Yeah, I know.
epic, but you're kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
Washington's pretty cool, but it's a little bit depressing at times. It's very dreary and rainy. Love it. Don't get me wrong. And for whatever reason, Colorado really stuck out to me as the most casually epic place that I could live. Because I live a little bit north of Boulder, so there's so much stuff, the city stuff, people stuff I could do, but I can also step around the corner and just look up at the mountains, or drive 45 minutes and be doing the most crazy hikes in Rocky Mountain National Park. So it really is this sort of casual epicness. I saw somebody sent me like an Instagram video, and they're like, how do people in Colorado stay focused when they just look up and there's these big rocks? Like, how are you not constantly distracted by the big rocks? I'm like, well, I kind of am.
Yeah, well, part of it is that's the way it is. And probably why people in Colorado seem to be happier than in other places, because they also do get distracted and they go off and they do that. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, you got to go for a hike. You're going to leave Friday at 2 p.m. and go off and take a hike, right? Even, around Denver and all those places, that's why it's such a growing area to move to. And yes, it's beautiful. I mean, I can understand that.
There's such a sense of place. Like every other place I've lived is like, okay, I'm in a town, there's a Starbucks down the street. That's pretty awesome. But here, I walk outside and you really, really feel like you're somewhere. It's like, oh man, I'm in the West. I'm in Colorado. There's mountains up there. Like I'm doing something, not just like, oh yeah, I'm here. Maybe I'll go to Starbucks later. It's like, no, like I'm here in the mountains. Like that really feels, really good. And that kind of pushes me to be more curious. Like, oh, hey, what's at the top of the mountain? What if I went on this hike? There's so much to explore, and that really there's a sense of youthfulness to that.
Yes.
That I like. It's just unintentional youthfulness that I really appreciate.
Well, we talked about a little bit before, the idea of making time for adventure and finding beautiful things and kind of celebrating them and just finding them out. That's, I think, a big problem that we have. The podcast is called We've Got a Problem, so I got to find one. But the fact is, we do have a problem that most people don't go out and take time for those kinds of things, to in a sense have a mini adventure even. So why do you think it's important, and how can we do it to make time for adventure and beautiful things?
Yeah. I mean, the first reason I think this is important is that the more new experiences you have, that literally changes the chemistry of your brain. Like, it forces your brain to reconcile with different things, and that pushes you in different ways. And I mean, even me just going for a hike and seeing something I've never seen before, pushes me to a mental state where, like, maybe I solve some other problem, or I come to some realization, because my brain is just working in a different way than it normally would. I also think it's important just to take the time and say, okay, I'm not, you sort of take yourself out of autopilot mode, right? I think it's very easy for us to go into, survival mode sounds intense. Because obviously we have a little more cognition than just pure survival mode, but on a daily basis, I even find myself doing this. I am in a survival mode. I'm like, okay, this is my normal life. I'm going to check emails. I'm going to make coffee. I'm going to eat. I'm going to do this. And even though I'm kind of thinking about things, I'm not really intentionally choosing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's sort of been like laid out for me, whether that was me laying out for myself before. It's just kind of just happens. And that doesn't feel great. It doesn't make you feel very alive. So whenever you can kind of intentionally break yourself out of that and ask, oh, like, what if this didn't have to be the case? Or what if I took the day off and I explored this? Or, what if doing this hard thing was worth it in some way? That kind of pulls you out of autopilot mode in a weird way. I would almost argue makes you more human. That allows you to experience life more fully, because that is, what differs us from animals, right? Is we sort of have that self-awareness and that sense of story. So why not tap into that even more? Why not, like, find the best stories that you can and enjoy it? Because we have like a beautiful gift of experience. Like don't lose that. Like, tap into that. And if you can see some dope mountains, do that as well. That's just fun.
Do that too. Just throw the mountains in there. But there's an article in the Atlantic recently about kind of the secret to satisfaction being wanting less, and it's that makes people think, oh well, I should just lower my expectations, and that's both true and misleading, because when you're trying to be satisfied with your life, and we're all kind of hunting satisfaction and meaning and purpose and all these kind of big concepts, but satisfaction is a big one, big kind of key to what people think of as happiness. And it's so fleeting because the things we think will satisfy us, that that kind of almost, yes, instinctual survival mode stuff of I've got to accumulate more things. I've got to do this. I got to do that. But it's those don't power you for very long. You get a new whatever, and yeah, you get this blip of enjoyment, of satisfaction, but then that becomes your baseline and you want more. So when you make time for those little moments, just even again carving out the moment to go, I need to take a hike this week. I need to go out and restore a bit and see those and be present for those moments when something special happens. Those are the kind of things that you remember. You remember your road trip for driving across the country. First of all, because a lot of things happened, but also because taking the time to you were fully present in what you were doing. You weren't moving between things, trying to get to some big destination, and that's the place I'm going, and ignoring all the stuff along the side of the road as you drove along, except maybe Mount Rushmore. So
yeah.
I mean, that whole stop and smell the roses thing is really kind of true, because there's so much out there. You just have to take your blinders off and look left or right.
I feel like it's not even just wanting less, right? It's sort of maybe removing the need for validation. And also being more intentional, because so much of the things we quote unquote want is just validation. Like, dude, I want a new denim jacket because that's going to make me feel a certain way and make me feel good about myself. Or, I got to have the MacBook because that Apple logo is gonna, or like the
when people are gonna see it. People are gonna see, and they're gonna get an image of who I am if I've got a MacBook and a denim jacket.
Exactly, which is kind of a survival thing. It's like, I want to be, the dominant, quote unquote. Not that I'm trying to be, the alpha or something, but like subconsciously, it's like, oh yeah, I want to be cooler than you. Absolutely, yeah. So if we can kind of remove that, and then sort of bring a focused intentionality and a presence to things, then maybe even just chilling in your backyard can be a more of a curious adventure than what you were doing yesterday.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hey, putting together IKEA furniture can be a curious adventure, especially when you're trying to.
You're going to be so present with that. Like, you're not putting that together if you aren't present.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I've put together a lot of IKEA furniture.
IKEA meditation with
the IKEA meditation. Seriously. Well, part of the thing for me when we talk about being present is that, like a bad interview where somebody's always thinking about the next thing that they're going to ask and not actually listening to what's going on around them. The fact is, so often we are on this autopilot that whatever it is that we're keying to our expectations. And if you only go with your expectations, you're never going to get something unexpected. And that's just, we're missing out. And,
we are
finding cool stuff and having, even mini adventures. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go, children, you don't have to go on a 5-week road trip across the United States.
But you should. If you can, you should.
I feel like the guy in the movie Love Actually. It's like, children, don't buy drugs, become a rock star, and they give you them for free. But yes, if you prioritize what you want to focus on, if you schedule it, if you do these things, if you kind of hack your way into it, and just make sure that that's something important, that you make time for things, then you'll have time to do it. You just have to make time for it. Because get out there and you don't. Okay, so you find beautiful things. You find beautiful things with beautiful people. What do you think the biggest fallacy is in the kind of, and I don't want to say the wedding photography industry, but in your industry in general, that kind of everybody buys into, that's just utter BS?
So it's more of it's not a specific fallacy, but it's more so the idea that what you do has to look a certain way. And that certain way might be slightly different to different people, depending on how they've been marketed to, what their families say, what they've been exposed to as a kid. But I really think I guess if I had to put it in one way, the fallacy is that you have to, your wedding has to look how other people believe it should look.
Yes.
And honestly, that goes for lifestyle, right? We could expand that in a more philosophical sense to your life has to look a certain way, or what you've been exposed to. And so really what I love to do is I love to kind of come alongside my couples and say, hey, look, I'm here for you guys. But at the end of the day, I want you to know that you don't have to do anything. I might make recommendations and you don't have to do those. But also, I'm going to say that you don't have to do what everybody else has told you to do. Like, I want you to sit and be present, be intentional, and ask yourselves, like, okay, what do we actually want? Because, you know, if somebody's going to have a wedding, and like, don't get me wrong, weddings are not cheap, right? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of time and effort. And if you're going to do that and like actually say, hey, I believe that this matters. Like, this is a celebration of our life and our commitment. And we're going to bring, you know, our closest friends and family, or whoever we decide to be there, you know, is going to matter. It's going to be special. We're going to celebrate and have all these beautiful, rich, deep moments. If you're actually going to do that, if that's really the case, it can't be fake. You can't just be checking boxes. You know, I hate to say tragic, but it does feel kind of tragic that people have been tricked into making weddings just a box checking event where everybody's just, you know, it's like, okay, well, we got to have the dopest flowers because they said that. And then we're going to do this dance, and this dance. And then we'll wrap it up by 11 p.m. Maybe we'll go have an after party. And yeah, that's great. And don't get me wrong. All those things can be good if it's what you've chosen. And if you actually have a reason for why you're doing them. But if you're just showing up because like, oh, we want to get married and we want to celebrate, and I guess this is how we do it. That sucks. That sucks for you. Like, you could have so much more. You know, it's funny. I've told people, sometimes I talk myself out of a job. I've like convinced certain people, or not convinced, I should say, I've had conversations with certain couples where ultimately they decided that they weren't going to have a wedding, that they were going to super downsize and maybe elope at a courthouse or just like, you know, sign the document. Colorado and Pennsylvania are South United States, so you don't need a witness. You can just go in a room by yourselves. So they just do that, and then they just go like screw off for a week and have fun by themselves. That's awesome. Like that's a success in my book.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, more so than even just taking beautiful photos of a random wedding. Like, if people are actually doing something that they love, perfect. Like, I've done my job.
What? So there's been a recurring theme on my show lately, which is the kind of idea that so many people get their value systems, their education, everything from other people. Mm-hmm. That it's a kind of a second-handed thing, that they don't take the time to think about what they themselves actually want. They're just going with what they think other people want of them, what they've been told they should do, what they've been presented as, this is what society does, so check these boxes. And
what they feel they have to do.
Rather
than a choice, because it is often more of a choice than we make it out to be.
Correct. There's so little thought put into what of the kind of soul searching, and there is a little bit of soul searching because it's hard for us to take a first-handed perspective sometimes, especially in a such wildly emotional process as getting married, I imagine, as that must be, because there's so many different things wrapped up in that. You're excited, you're nervous, all those things, and you're spending a lot of money. The fact is that you're kind of at your most vulnerable, and it's difficult to then take a step back and think about what you really want. But you need to do that, or you're going to end up. That's the whole thing. If you don't have a plan, somebody else is going to have a plan for you, but it's going to be their plan. Checking those boxes, like, okay, we've got to do the electric slide, is.
You don't, please, God, you don't have to. Unless you want to, then it's fine. I'll be there.
You do you. But
I will not be doing the electric slide with you, though.
But that becomes, there's like a formula that people apply. And if you want that, if that's really what you want, great, go for it.
Yeah.
rock
Make
on.
it the best electric slide you can. If you're going to do
right, man.
Get in there.
Get in
Boogie
there.
down, man.
You got to commit. You got to commit. But that's such a powerful thing to remember when going into anything, but regardless of whether it's a wedding or any other big event, to sit down and think through. It's like, just because you were told or you saw or you think this is the way it's got to be done doesn't mean that's how it is. You're making the choice. And as long as that's your choice, great, rock on.
Yeah. Even if that choice isn't hiring me, that's fine. If I can push you to be intentional and do what you want, and then that loses me a job, that's fine.
Right.
That's yeah.
You've done a lot of elopements as well. And on your website, you have tips on planning your elopement. I wouldn't say that you're trying to sell people on an elopement versus a wedding necessarily, but that presenting that as an alternative possibility that people may not have fully considered. I mean, they're like, can we just skip all this forced merriment and get together? Yeah, that's something a lot of people say to each other, but they don't know how to make that happen. If you haven't visited alexmedvick.com, everybody, go visit it right now. All the tips and tricks you need to know are on his blog.
My goal is just to give people options. Because I feel like a lot of the time we don't realize that something's a possibility until it's presented to us. So if I can present those options to people and then be like, oh, wow, yeah, actually, this is something that could be real. Like I think we kind of speak things into existence a lot of the time because, a lot of things will never happen or never occur to us if we don't actually verbalize and vocalize those things. So, I'm super pumped to just show up and say, hey, what if?
Yeah.
And then let everybody else run with that.
Yeah. So we've talked about the most overrated concept. What do you think the most underrated concept is? What do you think people are missing?
I think a really important question to ask, and this is something, if I could impart this deeply to everybody, it would be this, is to ask ourselves, if I were wrong about X, would I actually want to know? Would I really want to know, even if that completely ripped apart my understanding of reality, my understanding of myself, my understanding of the situation I'm in? If I could look it right in the face and I realize that I was wrong, would I want to know? Because that opens up a lot of opportunities. Yeah. If we kind of allow ourselves to be wrong and accept that, that opens up so much. Because if I have my head in the sand about some process that I'm doing wrong, or maybe my marketing sucks, or maybe I'm just not good enough in some way, and I'm just lying to myself about that. It's great. It's happy for the moment. I feel great. I feel great about it. But ultimately, I'm cutting myself off from maybe the next level of achievement or some other experience. So there's a lot of comfort in staying where you are and feeling right. But if you can kind of allow ourselves to say, hey, ooh, maybe I'm wrong. Let's explore that. What I want to know, let's try this on for a second. Let's a new outfit. Okay, maybe let's assume I'm wrong for a second. Let's live in that world for 10 minutes and see maybe, what would happen if I did that, if I were wrong about this. And I think, world peace might come about if we all truly, all truly embodied this, but that's not going to happen. But, on a personal level, I think that's so powerful.
Wow. That's super, super powerful. Because if we asked ourselves that question every once in a while, just, not all the time, boy, that would be horrible. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? But
it's a fine line.
It's a fine line. But if we asked ourselves that question when we're committed to something, like you say, when we've been dedicated to a path, it's like, but what I want to know is really the question. Do I want to know? Do I want to get out of my comfort zone? Is also part of that, because it's super comfortable to just keep rinsing and repeating. I mean, for a while, but
until the chafing kicks in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, until your hair falls out.
Yeah.
The fact is, though, that growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone, and I think I said it a little bit earlier. I had a guest several weeks ago who talked about how we need to be honest with ourselves about where our zones fall. So if you say 1 to 10, how anxious does X make you? And you go, well, it's like a 4. You're like, great, that's the learning zone. You know,
Yeah.
1 to 3, we're in the comfort zone. So we're just into the learning zone. It's great to be in learning zone. Not anxious, just learning. You know, stay in that zone. That's a great place to be because you're growing, but you're not so, you're not, you know, 9, that's so much that's too much right now, right? You go there, but thinking through where you're, again, being honest with yourself, where you are on that process, and like, but what if I'm wrong? What if, and do I want to know? And yeah, I kind of do, because there might be a better way to do this. There might be a better way to approach it. I might be, as you say, closing myself off to something instead of kind of living a life of openness and excitement. Yeah. Beautiful sentiment.
I think often we have problems, right? And maybe we can recognize the problem, but we're really looking for the solution in the wrong place. Yeah. Because we want to stay comfortable, we want to stay safe. There's an old parable, and I'm going to butcher this. I forget where it comes from. I don't know the exact stories. But essentially, you know, there's a guy out at night, and he's under a street light, and he's like, you know, he's kind of like fumbling around looking for something. And another man walks up to him and he says, "Oh, you know, what are you doing? What can I help you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for my keys." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, where did you last see them? Where did you drop them?" He's like, "Oh, well, over there, but it's dark there. The light's over here. I'm gonna search over here." Yeah, it's like the light's there, and maybe you were pointed there. Maybe that seems like the most easy, convenient place, but the problem's probably over there. It's probably where you don't want to look. It's probably where it's like a little more uncomfortable and scary to look. So that's, yeah. If I just want to throw that in there. I really like that.
But that's true. It's, you know, it's one of those. It goes along with that whole definition of insanity, is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, which is both not true and a lot of other things. But that's because that's, again, flawed logic that we've all talked about, and you know, we've all heard that. But there's a lot more to insanity than just doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Brushing your teeth to the depths of insanity twice a day at the same time. Who are you?
Who are
what
you?
What are you doing?
Yeah. But that so often it does happen, that maybe not in such extreme circumstances, but you go, this has happened, so I'm going to go here because it's easier. And you go, but it happened over there. That's the place you need to start looking. And yeah, it might be uncomfortable, and you might have to get out of the comfort zone a little bit. That whole, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Like,
that's true.
You're in the wrong. If you're over there searching for your keys and you didn't drop them over there, you're never going to find them. You gotta walk over there. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
So, Alex, it's been amazing getting a chance to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me. If you want to know more about Alex, check his website out at alexmedvick.com. He's got great tips on planning elopements, the process of hiring a photographer, and a bunch of other helpful stuff, as well as some beautiful photos. Instagram links in the description. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm Andrew Wallace, and we don't have a problem. We've got an opportunity.